Security! We have a situation in the main hallway.
The voice crackled through the walkie-talkie, sharp and urgent. Within seconds, 2 security guards were rushing toward the entrance of Westbridge Preparatory Academy, the most elite private school in the state, where tuition costs $45,000 a year and waiting lists stretch for years. Standing just inside the glass doors was a black man in his early 40s. He wore faded jeans, a plain gray hoodie, and work boots covered in dust. His face showed exhaustion, the kind that comes from long hours and hard labor. In his hand was a worn clipboard with papers attached. He looked exactly like what the school's vice principal, Richard Caldwell, assumed he was, someone who didn't belong. "Sir, you need to leave." Caldwell's voice was cold, authoritative. He was a white man in his 50s, impeccably dressed in an expensive suit, his gray hair perfectly styled. Everything about him screamed privilege and power. "This is a private institution. You can't just wander in off the street." The man looked up calmly. "I'm not wandering. I'm here for. I don't care why you're here." Caldwell cut him off, already waving to the security guards. "This school has protocols. You don't just walk into Westbridge Preparatory looking like that." His eyes swept dismissively over the man's work clothes. "If you're here for maintenance work, you use the service entrance in the back. If you're here to solicit, you leave immediately." "I'm not." "Are you deaf?" "I said leave." Caldwell's voice rose, drawing attention from students passing by. Several stopped to watch. "Johnson, escort this man out. Now." The security guard, a younger black man who looked deeply uncomfortable, approached hesitantly. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to." "My name is Dr. Marcus Williams," the man said quietly, pulling a business card from his pocket. "I'm here for a scheduled 10 a.m. meeting with your board of directors. I'm the new." Caldwell snatched the business card, glanced at it, and let out a condescending laugh. "Dr. Marcus Williams. Right. And I'm the president. Anyone can print a business card. Do you think we're that easy to fool?" He crumpled the card and dropped it on the floor. "Get him out of here before I call the police for trespassing." What Richard Caldwell didn't know, what he was too arrogant and prejudiced to consider, was that the man he was trying to throw out like garbage was about to become his boss. And in exactly 4 to 5 minutes, Richard Caldwell's entire world was going to collapse. Let me rewind 12 hours. Back to when Dr. Marcus Williams received the phone call that would change everything. Marcus was a black man who'd built his career from nothing. Born in the projects. Single mother who worked 3 jobs. Scholarships to college. Medical degree. Then a PhD in educational administration. He'd spent 15 years working his way up from teacher to assistant principal to superintendent in various districts. And yesterday, he'd been offered the position of a lifetime superintendent of the Westbridge Preparatory School District, a network of 5 elite private schools serving some of the wealthiest families in the state. 6-figure salary, full authority over curriculum, hiring, policy. It was a culmination of everything he'd worked for. The board had scheduled an introductory meeting for 10 a.m. Marcus was supposed to meet with the directors, tour the facilities, and begin the transition process. But Marcus had a problem. His car had broken down the night before, transmission failure. The repair shop wouldn't have it ready until tomorrow. And his suit, the expensive one he planned to wear for his first day, was at the dry cleaners across town. He'd tried to reschedule, called the board secretary at 7 a.m. "I'm so sorry, but I'm having transportation issues. Could we possibly push the meeting to this afternoon?" "I'm afraid that's impossible, Dr. Williams. The board members have very tight schedules. Several are flying out of town after this meeting. If you can't make 10 a.m., we'll have to reschedule for next week." Next week meant delays, meant starting behind schedule, meant giving them reason to question his reliability before he'd even begun. So Marcus made a decision. He'd take the bus to the school. It was only 3 stops. He'd wear his weekend clothes since the dry cleaners didn't open until 10 a.m. He'd carry his credentials and explain the situation when he arrived. He was a professional, a doctor of education. Surely they'd understand that clothing didn't define competence. He had no idea how wrong he was. Marcus arrived at Westbridge Preparatory at 9:50 a.m., 10 minutes early. Responsible. Professional. The building was stunning. Georgian architecture, manicured lawns, a fountain in the circular driveway. Students in designer clothes walked past carrying expensive backpacks. Parents in luxury cars pulled up to drop off their children. Marcus walked through the main entrance, heading toward the administrative offices where he was supposed to meet the board secretary, Mrs. Henderson. That's when Richard Caldwell spotted him. "Excuse me." Caldwell's voice echoed through the marble-floored entrance hall. "You there? What do you think you're doing?" Marcus turned, confused. "I'm sorry. Are you lost? This is a private school. We don't allow unauthorized people on campus." Caldwell walked over, his expression one of barely concealed disgust. "How did you even get past the gate?" "I walked through the front entrance. I have a meeting." "A meeting?" Caldwell's laugh was cruel. "Dressed like that? Let me guess. You're here to apply for a custodial position? Groundskeeper? Kitchen staff?" Marcus felt a familiar sting of prejudice. He'd experienced it his whole life, people seeing his skin color and making assumptions. But he kept his voice calm, professional. "Actually, I'm Dr. Marcus Williams. I have a 10 a.m. meeting with the board of directors." "Dr. Williams." Caldwell said it like it was a punchline to a joke. "Really? And what exactly are you a doctor of?" "Street medicine." A few students nearby giggled. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "I have a Ph.D. in educational administration. I'm scheduled to meet with security." Caldwell didn't even let him finish. Just snapped his fingers like Marcus was a nuisance to be removed. "We have a situation." That's when the confrontation from the opening happened. Caldwell demanding Marcus leave, refusing to listen, crumpling his business card and throwing it on the floor like trash. "Sir, please." The security guard, Johnson, looked agonized. "If you just have some ID, maybe we can verify." "I don't need to verify anything," Caldwell snapped. "Look at him, Johnson. Does he look like someone who belongs at Westbridge Preparatory? Use your common sense." A crowd was forming now. Students, teachers, parents who just dropped off their children, all watching a black man in work clothes being accosted by school administration. Some looked uncomfortable. Most just stared, accepting the scene as normal. Of course this man didn't belong. Of course he was being removed. The system was working as designed. Marcus felt humiliation burning in his chest. But he'd been in situations like this before. He knew getting angry would only make it worse, only confirm their prejudices. "Mr. Caldwell." "It's Vice Principal Caldwell, and I'm done entertaining this conversation." Caldwell turned to the growing crowd. "Students, please head to class. There's nothing to see here. Just someone who doesn't understand boundaries." "I understand boundaries perfectly," Marcus said, his voice tight. "What I'm experiencing is discrimination. You're making assumptions based on my appearance and refusing to—" "Oh, here we go." Caldwell rolled his eyes dramatically. "The discrimination card. Classic. Let me tell you something. This has nothing to do with anything except the fact that you're trespassing on private property without authorization." "I have authorization. I'm scheduled to meet with—" "If you say the board of directors one more time, I'm calling the police." Caldwell pulled out his phone. "You have 60 seconds to leave voluntarily, or you're being arrested for trespassing." Marcus looked around the crowd, saw the judgment in their eyes, saw them looking at his dusty work boots, his worn jeans, his gray hoodie, saw them drawing conclusions. This was what it meant to be a black man in America. Your credentials didn't matter. Your education didn't matter. Your accomplishments didn't matter. All that mattered was that you didn't look like you belonged. 50 seconds, Caldwell announced smugly. Marcus made a decision. He could stand here and be arrested, humiliated further, give them ammunition to question his judgment, start his tenure with scandal. Or he could leave with dignity and let the situation resolve itself naturally. "Fine," Marcus said quietly. "I'll go. But this conversation isn't over." "Yes, it is." Caldwell smiled, victorious. "Johnson, make sure he exits the property, and log this incident. We need documentation in case he tries this again." Marcus walked toward the door, every eye in the entrance hall following him, students whispering, teachers exchanging knowing looks. The message was clear. We don't want your kind here. As Marcus reached the exit, a voice called out,
Wait, one moment.
Wait
Please,
one
everyone,
moment.
wait. It's
An
important.
older white woman in her 60s came rushing down the main staircase. She wore a professional gray suit and carried a folder. Her face showed panic. Dr. Williams. She was breathless. Dr. Williams, I'm so sorry. I was upstairs preparing the conference room and I didn't realize. She stopped, looking at Caldwell with confusion. Richard, why is Dr. Williams leaving? The board is waiting for him. The entrance hall went silent. Caldwell's face went from smug to confused. What are you talking about, Helen? This is Dr. Marcus Williams, the new superintendent. His meeting started 5 minutes ago. I came down to see why he hadn't arrived yet. She looked at Marcus apologetically. I'm so sorry, Dr. Williams. I should have come down to meet you personally. Caldwell's face drained of all color. The new superintendent. Yes. Helen's eyes narrowed, taking in the scene. The crumpled business card on the floor. The security guard's uncomfortable stance. The crowd of onlookers. Richard, what exactly is going on here? Marcus spoke quietly. Mr. Caldwell assumed I was trespassing. He refused to listen when I explained I had a meeting. He was having me removed from the property. Helen's expression went from confused to horrified to furious in rapid succession. You were removing the new superintendent? The man who was about to become your direct supervisor. The crowd gasped. Whispers erupted. I didn't know. Caldwell's voice was strangled. He was dressed like. How was I supposed to know? By listening to him. Helen's voice rose. By treating him with basic respect? By not making assumptions based on his appearance. She turned to Marcus, her face showing genuine remorse. Dr. Williams, on behalf of Westbridge Preparatory, I am so deeply sorry. This is absolutely unacceptable. Please, the board is waiting. If you'll follow me. Marcus looked at Caldwell. So the man's entire world crumbling in real time. So the realization that he just humiliated his new boss in front of students, staff, and parents. After you, Mrs. Henderson, Marcus said calmly. As he walked past Caldwell toward the stairs, he paused. We'll be discussing this incident in detail, Mr. Caldwell, very soon. The board meeting lasted 3 hours. Marcus sat at the head of a massive mahogany conference table, surrounded by 12 board members, wealthy donors, business leaders, and education advocates who'd hired him to modernize and improve the Westbridge system. They discussed curriculum changes, diversity initiatives, budget allocations, strategic planning for the next 5 years, and Marcus told them exactly what happened when he arrived that morning. The silence after his story was deafening. Board Chair Dr. Patricia Morris, a black woman in her 70s who'd founded a tech company worth billions, spoke first. Richard Caldwell, vice principal at the main campus. I know him. He's been there for 20 years. Her voice was ice. And he tried to have you arrested for trespassing on your first day. He refused to listen when I identified myself, Marcus confirmed. He made assumptions based on my appearance and treated me as a threat rather than a professional. Another board member, Robert Chen, leaned forward. Dr. Williams, I want to be very clear about something. We hired you specifically to bring change to Westbridge, to challenge the old guard mentality, to make this institution more inclusive and equitable. If Caldwell is representative of the culture here, he is, said another board member, a Latina woman named Maria Rodriguez. I've received complaints about him before, from parents of color, from scholarship students. He has a reputation for being unwelcoming to anyone he deems doesn't fit the Westbridge image. Dr. Morris stood up. Then he needs to go. Immediately. Wait! Marcus held up his hand. I understand the instinct, but I'd like to handle this differently. The board looked at him with surprise. You want to keep him? Robert Chen looked skeptical. No, I want to give him a choice. Marcus pulled out his notes. I spent the walk back to the bus stop this morning thinking about this. Richard Caldwell represents a systemic problem. He's not an isolated incident. He's a symptom of a culture that values appearance over substance, that makes assumptions about people based on race and class, that protects privilege at the expense of equity. He looked around the table. Firing him makes him a martyr. His friends on staff will say he was unfairly targeted, that I came in vindictive, that I couldn't handle constructive criticism. But if I give him a choice, reform or resign, then he owns his decision. And more importantly, we send a message to every staff member that this culture is changing. Dr. Morris smiled slowly. You want to make an example of him. I want to give every person at Westbridge the opportunity to evolve. But I also want to make it very clear that those who refuse to evolve will not remain. Marcus leaned back. Richard Caldwell gets one chance to apologize publicly, undergo anti-bias training, and commit to cultural change. If he refuses or fails, his done, his choice, his consequence. The board voted unanimously to support Marcus's approach. 2 days later, Richard Caldwell sat in Superintendent Williams' new office. The office itself was a statement. Marcus had removed all the stuffy traditional furniture and replaced it with modern, minimalist pieces. The walls, which had once been covered in portraits of previous, all-white, all-male superintendents, now displayed artwork from students of diverse backgrounds. On the desk was a nameplate, Dr. Marcus Williams, Superintendent. Caldwell stared at it like it was a death sentence. Mr. Caldwell, thank you for coming. Marcus's voice was professional. Cool. I wanted to discuss Monday's incident before we proceed with any decisions about your future here. Dr. Williams, I want to apologize. Caldwell's voice shook. He'd clearly been coached by his attorney. I made a terrible mistake. I should have listened to you. I let my assumptions cloud my judgment. It won't happen again. Won't it? Marcus leaned forward. See, I spent the last 2 days reviewing your record here. 17 complaints from parents of color over the past 10 years. 42 discipline referrals written up for Black and Hispanic students, disproportionately high compared to white students with similar behaviors. 3 formal complaints from teachers about your treatment of staff members who didn't fit your idea of what Westbridge should look like. Caldwell went pale. Those complaints were investigated and dismissed by administrators who were your friends, who shared your worldview, who had as much interest in maintaining the status quo as you did. Marcus slid a folder across the desk. But I'm not them, and this isn't that administration anymore. Caldwell opened the folder. Inside were copies of every complaint, every incident report, every documented moment where his bias had impacted students and staff. This is a pattern, Mr. Caldwell. I wasn't an isolated incident. I was just the first person you couldn't dismiss or intimidate, because I had power you didn't anticipate. What do you want from me? Caldwell's voice was barely a whisper. I want you to make a choice. Marcus stood up and walked to the window overlooking the campus. Choice 1. You resign. Today, with your pension intact and a neutral letter of recommendation. You walk away with your dignity, and I never speak of this incident publicly. And Choice 2. Choice 2. You stay. But you undergo mandatory bias training. You issue a public apology to the school community. You meet with every family who filed complaint against you and personally apologize. You work with our new diversity coordinator to develop better disciplinary procedures. And you accept that you're on probation for the next year. One more incident of discriminatory behavior, and you're terminated without pension. Marcus turned to face him. Those are your options. Reform or resign. But you don't get to keep doing things the way you've always done them. That culture dies today. Caldwell sat in silence for a long moment. If I choose to stay, if I do everything you're asking, will you let this go? The incident on Monday. I'll let it go for my personal considerations, yes, but I can't control what the community thinks. That's going to depend on how sincere your efforts at change appear, and whether you actually follow through or just perform for a year until you think the heat is off. Marcus sat back down. I'll be honest with you, Mr. Caldwell. I don't think you'll choose to stay. I think the idea of admitting you were wrong, of working with a Black superintendent you tried to have arrested, of actually treating people of color with respect, I think that's more than your pride can handle. I think you'll resign and spend the rest of your life telling yourself you were the victim in this story. He looked Caldwell directly in the eye. But I'm giving you the choice anyway, because that's what equitable leadership looks like. Even people who don't deserve second chances sometimes get them. What they do with that chance is up to them. Caldwell stared at the folder in his hands, at the documentation of years of bias, at the proof of what he'd become. I need to think about this. You have 24 hours. Marcus's tone left no room for negotiation. After that, I make the decision for you. Richard Caldwell resigned the next morning, sent an email at 6 a.m., claimed retirement and pursuing other opportunities. No admission of wrongdoing, no public apology, just gone. Marcus wasn't surprised, but he was ready. He'd already identified Caldwell's replacement, a black woman with 15 years of progressive educational leadership experience, someone who understood that excellence and equity weren't opposing values. The message was clear. Westbridge was changing. Those who could adapt would stay. Those who couldn't would leave. The real work began after Caldwell's departure. Marcus called an all-staff assembly. Every teacher, administrator, and staff member from all 5 Westbridge campuses gathered in the main auditorium. He stood at the podium in a sharp navy suit, the one from the dry cleaners, finally retrieved. But before speaking, he pulled something from his pocket, his gray hoodie from Monday, the one he'd been wearing when Caldwell tried to have him removed. He held it up. "How many of you saw me on Monday?" he asked. "How many of you watched as Vice Principal Caldwell had me escorted off campus because he decided I didn't belong here?" Uncomfortable silence. A few hands raised. Most people looked at their laps. "I want you to understand something. I have a PhD from Harvard. I've been an educator for 20 years. I've won state awards for educational innovation. I've improved every district I've worked in." He gestured to the hoodie. But none of that mattered on Monday, because Richard Caldwell took one look at me and decided that a black man in casual clothes couldn't possibly be someone important. He let that sink in. "Now I want you to think about something else. How many students walk through these halls feeling exactly like I felt on Monday? How many students of color have been judged, dismissed, or disciplined not based on their actions, but based on assumptions about who they are?" The silence was profound. I was hired to transform Westbridge, to make it a place where excellence isn't defined by wealth or appearance, where every student, regardless of their background, has access to the same opportunities, where the color of your skin or the size of your parents' bank account doesn't determine your potential. Marcus put the hoodie down. "Some of you are going to embrace this change. You're going to examine your biases, adjust your practices, and become better educators. Others are going to resist. You're going to say I'm being too sensitive, that I'm playing the race card, that things were fine the way they were." He looked around the auditorium. "To the second group, you won't last here. Not because I'm vindictive, but because this institution will no longer protect mediocrity disguised as tradition." Richard Caldwell chose to leave rather than evolve. That door remains open for anyone else who feels the same way. A hand raised. A white male teacher in his 60s. Marcus nodded. "Dr. Williams, I've been at Westbridge for 30 years. I've never considered myself biased. But I'll admit, I watched what happened Monday, and I didn't say anything. I just assumed administration knew what they were doing." He paused. "I'm ashamed of that now. How do we do better?" Marcus softened slightly. "You start by acknowledging it, by recognizing that silence in the face of injustice is complicity, by understanding that good intentions don't negate harmful impacts, and then you commit to learning, to listening, to changing." He pulled out a document. "We're implementing mandatory equity training for all staff. We're revising our disciplinary policies to eliminate racial disparities. We're creating an anonymous reporting system for students and families to report bias incidents. We're hiring a diversity coordinator with real authority, and we're tracking outcomes, grades, discipline referrals, college acceptances, by race and socioeconomic status to identify where systemic barriers exist." Another hand. A black female teacher. "Will this training be voluntary?" "No, it's mandatory for all staff, and completion is tied to contract renewal." Marcus's tone was firm. "Equity isn't optional. It's foundational to everything we do here. 6 months later, Westbridge Preparatory was a different place. The changes were visible everywhere. Hallways displayed student artwork from diverse cultural backgrounds. The curriculum included authors and historical figures who'd been previously excluded. Discipline referrals for students of color had dropped by 60%. Parent satisfaction surveys from families of color had improved dramatically. And perhaps most importantly, enrollment application from diverse families had tripled. Marcus stood in his office reviewing the data when there was a knock on his door. "Come in." A young black student, maybe 14 years old, entered nervously. "Dr. Williams? My counselor said I could talk to you." "Of course. What's your name?" "Jeremiah. Jeremiah Scott. I'm a freshman." He sat down carefully. "I wanted to say thank you." "Thank me? For what?" "For being here. For looking like me." Jeremiah's voice cracked slightly. "I'm on scholarship. My family isn't wealthy like most kids here. And before you came, I always felt like I had to prove I belonged. Like I was one mistake away from being kicked out." Marcus leaned forward. "And now I feel like maybe I do belong. Not because I'm the exception, but because being black and being excellent aren't opposites." He smiled shyly. "My history teacher, Mr. Morrison, the one you hired to replace Mr. Caldwell, he actually listens to me, calls on me, makes me feel like my voice matters." "Your voice does matter, Jeremiah." "I know, but before, nobody told me that. Nobody showed me that." He stood up. "That's all. I just wanted you to know that what you're doing here, it matters. Not just for me, for all of us." After Jeremiah left, Marcus sat back in his chair and exhaled. This was why he'd taken the job. Not for the salary or the prestige, but for students like Jeremiah who deserved to feel seen, valued, and welcomed. A week later, Marcus received an email from Richard Caldwell. "Dr. Williams, I've spent the last 6 months reflecting on my behavior and my career. I've come to understand that I cause real harm to students and families through my biases and my refusal to examine my assumptions. I want you to know that I've enrolled in anti-bias training on my own. I'm volunteering with a youth mentorship program in a predominantly black neighborhood. I'm trying to do better. I'm not asking for my job back. I know that bridge is burned. But I wanted you to know that your decision to offer me a choice, even though I didn't take it at the time, has stuck with me. You could have destroyed me publicly. You didn't. And that grace has made me think harder about the kind of person I want to be. I hope the students at Westbridge know how lucky they are to have you. Richard Caldwell." Marcus read the email twice. He didn't respond. Didn't need to. Some people change when they are forced to. Some people change when they are shown grace. And some people never change at all. Richard Caldwell might never fully undo the damage he'd caused. But at least he was trying. That was something. 1 year after that humiliating morning in the entrance hall, Westbridge Preparatory held its annual award ceremony. Marcus stood on stage, looking out at a sea of students and families more diverse than this school had ever been. Scholarship students from working-class backgrounds. Students of color who'd been actively recruited rather than merely tolerated. Students who transferred from public schools seeking the opportunities Westbridge now genuinely provided. "When I took this job," Marcus said, "I was told that Westbridge had high standards. And I've learned that was true. But I've also learned that those standards were selectively applied. That excellence often meant looks like us, talks like us, comes from families like ours." He paused. "True excellence has nothing to do with appearance, with wealth, with conforming to narrow definitions of what success looks like. True excellence is about potential, about providing every student, regardless of background, with the tools and support to achieve their dreams." He looked at Jeremiah Scott, who was receiving an award for academic achievement. "This year, we've proven that equity and excellence aren't opposites. They are partners. When we stopped judging students by their zip codes and started supporting their aspirations, our outcomes improved across the board. Test scores up, college acceptance is up, student satisfaction up, alumni donations up. Every metric improved when we chose inclusion over exclusion." Marcus held up a photograph. It showed him on that first day, hoodie, jeans, work boots, being confronted by security while Caldwell watched with contempt. Some of you have seen this photo. It went viral after the incident. People called it a perfect example of bias, of how black professionals are treated as threats, of how appearance is valued over credentials. He smiled, but I want to reframe this moment. This wasn't a failure. It was an opportunity to examine our biases, to change our culture, to build something better. He put the photo down. Richard Caldwell judged me by my clothes and decided I didn't belong. He was wrong, but his wrongness created space for real conversation about who belongs at elite institutions, about how we define merit, about what excellence actually looks like. Marcus looked around the auditorium. Every person in this room belongs here, not because of what you wear or where you're from, but because you have potential, because you deserve opportunity, because excellence has no color, no price tag, no dress code. The auditorium erupted in applause. After the ceremony, a parent approached Marcus, a black woman in her 40s with her son beside her. "Dr. Williams, thank you. My son is a freshman this year. He's the first person in our family to attend a school like this. And because of the changes you've made, he actually feels welcome. He's thriving." "That's all I could hope for," Marcus said. "Can I ask you something?" She hesitated. "That day, when Caldwell tried to throw you out, were you angry?" Marcus thought carefully. "I was hurt, humiliated, frustrated, but mostly I was determined. Determined to make sure no student ever felt the way I felt that day. Determined to change a system that valued appearance over substance." "Did it work?" Marcus looked around at the diverse crowd of students, parents, and staff celebrating together. At the scholarship students wearing their awards proudly. At the teachers who'd embraced equity training and transformed their practices. At the culture that had shifted from exclusive to inclusive. "Yeah," he said, "it worked." The moral lesson: never judge someone by their appearance. The person you dismiss as not belonging might be the person who determines your future. More importantly, systems that judge people by appearance rather than character create cultures of exclusion that harm everyone. True excellence requires equity. True leadership requires humility. And true change requires people brave enough to challenge assumptions, confront bias, and build institutions where everyone, regardless of how they look or where they come from, has the opportunity to succeed. The clothes don't make the professional. The credentials do. The character does. The commitment to excellence does. Everything else is just prejudice masquerading as standards.